Good morning and welcome. My name is Dr. Ajit Ranade and I am presently working as Dean at Mumbai Veterinary College, which is attached to the Maharashtra Animal and Fisheries Sciences University, which has the headquarters at Nagpur. Now, in this present era of COVID 19, we have been very careful and we have to take care at every aspect of life. The veterinarians who are working in the field of veterinary practice, they are always exposed to different risks. And one of the risks is the risk because of radiation. Many veterinarians, knowingly, unknowingly, inadvertently get exposed to radiation. And it is utmost essential that we do take care of ourselves in this particular scenario because of the radiation and the risks associated with radiation by understanding the safety measures of how to protect ourselves from the radiation risks. To throw some light on this, the Department of Nuclear Veterinary Medicine at Mumbai Veterinary College, MAFSU, has organized a webinar today. And this webinar deals with radiation safety for practicing vets. We have eminent speakers from the institute, Dr. Galdhar, Dr. Garud, Dr. Gaikwad, and also we have Dr. P.R. Chowdhury as one of the guest lecturer during this webinar. In addition, the support from Dr. Masare, Dr. Pawarkar is worth appreciating, and also the support given by ISVM authorities and office bearers is also acknowledged at the beginning of this particular webinar. So, viewers, I'm sure the deliberations today will be very fruitful for you. I wish all the best for this webinar. Thank you. God bless you.
Respected and dear participants, good morning. I am thankful to you all for your active participation in the lectures on the first day of ISBM webinar 2020 organized, and I am sure that the thoroughly informative lectures would have kept you glad. Starting from today, the Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, in association with Department of Veterinary Nuclear Medicine, Bombay Veterinary College, Mumbai, has arranged 4 lectures spread over a period of 2 days on radiation safety for practicing veterinarians. As you all should be aware of, all the veterinary educational institute in the country, Bombay Veterinary College, Mumbai, has the distinction of having an exclusive Department of Veterinary Nuclear Medicine. In this connection, I would like to mention a few important points regarding the veterinary nuclear medicine facility at Veterinary College, Mumbai. The Department of Veterinary Nuclear Medicine was established in the premises of Mumbai Veterinary College in 2004 and has since grown as a facility that has standardized diagnostic scintigraphy procedures like thyroid scan, renal and hepatoportal shunt, MUGA, bone scan, scan for metastasis, gastric emptying, and hepatic and splenic scan. It's matter of proud that such exclusive services have been extended for the diagnosis and therapy of hundreds of animal patients. In 2007, the radioisotope laboratory was integrated into Department of Nuclear Medicine, Bombay Veterinary College, Mumbai. In 2013, Radiological Safety Division, Atomic Energy Regulatory Board approved the radioisotope laboratory as Type 2 research laboratory. Besides, the Department of Veterinary Nuclear Medicine has been involved in field of drug development research, especially novel drug delivery system. The department has extended its services to many institutes across the country in NDDS biodistribution studies. I am sure The lectures to be delivered during this webinar will enrich the information of the participants with regards to radiation, ways of radiation hazards and radiation safety. Hope to get you valuable information, feedbacks on lectures by the faculty member associated with the work on nuclear medicine. Please take care of yourself and your loved ones. Jai Hind. Dr. D.S. Noryal, President, Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. I'm Dr. Rajiv Gaikwad, in charge Veterinary Nuclear Medicine and Head Department of Veterinary Medicine, Mumbai Veterinary College, Mumbai, which is a constituent college of Maharashtra Animal and Fishery Sciences University, Nagpur. Veterinary Nuclear Medicine Center was established on 13th August 2004 under Jai Vigyan Technology Mission, Government of India, with the financial support from BRNS, Department of Atomic Energy. Since establishment of Veterinary Nuclear Medicine Center is engaged in various scintigraphy procedures of domestic animals for diagnostic purpose. Center also involved in evaluation of novel drug delivery system. Friends, in your day-to-day practice, you might be coming across with the various radiations equipments. So through such equipments, there are likely chances of getting a radiation exposure to radiation workers as well as the public. So during these 2 days online webinar on radiation safety for practicing veterinarians, you will get information pertaining to the how to minimize the radiation exposure to the radiation workers as well as the public. I hope this webinar will be useful for each and every veterinarian. I am thankful to Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine for joint organization of this seminar. Thank you.
Participants, from the desk of organizing secretary of the webinar on radiation safety for practicing veterinarians, I welcome you all. I am thankful to our university authority, Maharashtra Animal and Fishery Sciences University, our college authorities, our departmental authorities for permitting to organize this webinar. I am also thankful to Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine to act as one part for organize this particular webinar. Dear friends, in this webinar we are arranging 4 lectures. They are completely focusing on the importance of radiation in diagnostic of veterinary clinical practice, at the same time how we can do the prevention of radiation, what are the radiation hazards and how we can do the protection from the radiation. I am sure that deliberations and explanations and the presentations available during the seminar and webinar will be helpful for practicing veterinarians to understand the radiation safety in proper way. I again thankful to all for acting as an integral part of this particular webinar, and I give best luck to all the participants to take the enrichment of this, to take the knowledge about this particular webinar. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Good morning, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to be a part of this webinar series and present to you this topic of radiation safety in the veterinary practice as an opening batsman of this webinar. I am very much thankful to my department, the Department of Veterinary Nuclear Medicine, my authorities in the department, as well as the dean of our college and the dignitaries of the ISVM who has been very much instrumental in making this webinar series happen. Why we should discuss this radiation safety in first place? You know, the X-rays are very commonly available diagnostic modalities. In a survey what we did recently, out of 99%, out of 99 respondents, we had around 61% of the people who were working with the X-rays in their clinics. But the issues what we have, that not all of these X-ray facilities are dedicated X-ray facilities. Many a times they work in on makeshift X-ray areas, which are used otherwise for other areas as well, other purposes as well. We don't have the dedicated staff in our clinics or even our practices. X-rays not being visible, that does not mean that they are not present in the environment or in the areas where we are working with. X-rays do have a cumulative effect on the human health, and unfortunately in our veterinary practices or in our veterinary field, we have been having quite unscrutinized practices, uh, and which is why it's important that we need to discuss the radiation safety. And the reason I have chosen here about only about the X-rays, because that being the most commonly available and practically relatable diagnostic modality in our field, right? So let's look at the difference between the human X-rays and the veterinary X-rays. As you can see it correctly, the human one, the one who is taking the human X-ray, right here, there is no one else present in this room except the patient, and everyone else is behind the shield of the lid. So here there is only a patient, or rather the part of his body are only going to get exposed to the X-rays here. On the other hand, exactly opposite way, comes in picture when we have a veterinary or the animal X-rays happening. We have one patient and at least two handlers to restrain that animal, and who are at different distances from the primary beam from the X-ray, and they are likely to get exposed to this. And that's what makes it very important that we address this topic of radiation safety in the veterinary medicine. So how the animal restrainer or the people or the veterinarians who are doing the X-rays basically get exposed to, the concept is of a scattered radiation. It could ideally come from the X-ray set itself, the tube itself, or the primary beam. When it penetrates the patient, it can also scatter a few radiation, which may expose the patient to the may expose the restrainer to these things and potentially have harmful effects. So here you can see the range of the scatter radiation is quite big, and you can see a scatter around it, and the restrainer who is standing about 2 to 3 feet away is also exposed to this, and that's very important here. There had been an advent of collimation or using collimators. So these basically what do they do? They are attached to the X-ray tube, and they make sure that you are able to focus on the area of interest, so that the beam is minimized and the extent of scatter is reduced. It also has a benefit of having a good contrast or good brightness in the X-ray quality as well. However, despite this, the veterinarians or the animal restrainers, because of their sheer proximity with the primary beam, we have issues with the exposure. So in what all things or what all ways the restrainer or the veterinarian can get exposed to these X-rays? The most important is the eyes, followed by thyroid, breasts, gonads, and the hands as well. And all these things would get exposed and essentially should need shielding to minimize the exposure. There have been some occupational dose limits devised by the Atomic Energy Regulatory Board, which says that 20 millisieverts of an effective dose in a year is permissible to an occupational worker. To a normal human public, it's just about 1 millisieverts per year. And we also have a different equivalent dose to different organs as well. Like for example, eye lens has got 150 millisieverts of equivalent dose. Skin and hands and feet also have a different set of equivalent dose there. And if we by any chance are crossing this particular dose, we are likely to have issues with the X-ray exposure, either deterministic effects or stochastic effects as well. So there have been, many studies done. I would rather say not many, a few studies done to evaluate the extent of radiation exposure to the animal restrainers, radiation workers, or even the veterinarians as well. But amongst these, there has been one interesting study done by a Korean group which evaluated the restrainer exposure to the scattered radiation, in practically small animal radiography thing, and they have used the common TLD batches which we also use here in India. And it's important to look at their findings, it's very interesting. So what they did is they had placed three restrainers or three person, one restrainer A, restrainer B, and C as an observer, which was made to stand about 1 meter away from the table or the exposure area. Restrainer A was placed near the cathode of the X-ray tube, B was placed towards the anode of the X-ray tubes. So what they did is they did around 778 X-rays or radiographs over the period of 2 months, and they measured the exposure at different organs of these restrainers or the observers for 2 months. And after 2 months, they did an analysis of that exposure. The kind of X-rays that they had done in cranial part of the patient's body was involved, and it was around 512 X-rays, whereas the caudal part had 778 X-rays, right? And the average, or rather I would say the mean voltage that they had used was 38.3 kilovolts, and the MAs was 7. The reason behind this being so low is because the patient size, or in Korea, is average size is around 5 to 6 kg, so they have smaller breeds there which have a high chance of getting more exposure. So when they analyze the exposure happening to eyes, thyroid, breast, gonads, and hands, they had put the dosimeters outside the red protection as well as inside the red protection to understand the protection offered by the lead shielding, right? The restrainer A, which was near the cathode, had basically maximum exposure compared to the B and C. The eyes were exposed most outside the shielding, and I may want to draw your attention to this, because in our practice we do not have uh, a usual practice of shielding our eyes, and we have been exposing our lenses to these X-rays pretty commonly when we are doing the X-rays. So even the observer, which was 1 meter away from this X-ray table, he also had considerable exposure at the level of his eyes compared to the other organs, right? After eyes, the next thing was the thyroid. Now it is also very uncommon for us to shield our thyroid glands with a different shield, a lead shield altogether. Then there were hands, of course, which were holding the animals and very closer to the primary beam. Then it was the breast and the gonads, right? So it's important to understand that restrainer A had more exposure than B and C, and we'll see why possibly was the reason behind this. So restrainer A was here near the cathode and B was at the anode, right? So there is an effect called as anode heel effect. The X-rays which are coming out from the X-ray tube, or the source here, they are more intense towards the cathode and less intense towards the anode. That possibly is one of the reasons. The other reason being that while for performing of the X-rays, the restrainer possibly had leaned towards the tube just to make sure that there is a proper restraining happening, and due to which he came close to the primary beam and had more exposure. Going to the next, why the observer had different or lesser exposure compared to the restrainers. Now there is an important thing that we understand, that there is a law of inverse square, right? So you double your distance from the X-ray source, it will decrease your dose of exposure by a factor of 4. So if you are moving from 1 meter to 2 meter, the dose that will be exposed to will be 1/4 of the dose which will be exposed to at 1 meter. If you are moving from 2 meter to 3 meter, your dose will reduce by 1/9. So longer the distance from the X-ray tube or the X-ray table, lesser the exposure, and that is very well seen in comparative analysis of restrainer A, restrainer B, and the thing. Now they also checked how much protection was offered to them by wearing the lead sheet. So in eyes, the lead shield offered them 86% reduction. It was 92% for B and 98% for C. So for observer C, the distance as well as shielding worked best in his best interest, and he was protected from the exposure to a greatest extent compared to the other two, right? Importantly, the hands of restrainer A did not have much protection despite wearing the lead gloves, and the reason behind that could be the close proximity with uh, the primary beam, and which is why possibly he did not have uh, as much exposure, as much protection offered compared to the others. But mind you that all these things can be only possible provided the restrainer or X-ray worker is wearing all these shields: the apron, the cap to shield your brain, goggles to shield your eyes, the contraption to shield your thyroid, and the gloves as well. Now, we had done this study. We had secluded this survey or a questionnaire amongst all veterinarians, and we got about 99 responses. The findings were quite interesting, and I would like to put forth a few findings in front of you guys, just to understand that where we stand. And I have intentionally put this picture here of a veterinarian suspect, supposing himself to be a Superman. I mean, for the obvious reasons, of course. So we had this question in our this thing, that do you practice manual restraining? And to our surprise, and of course, I would say that's a pretty much open secret, that 88% of our veterinarians have been restraining their animals themselves or manually, which makes sure that they are exposed to this particular radiation or scatter radiation to a fullest extent. And this practice has been, there worldwide, rather all over the India also. Do they have access to protection? And it was very heartening to see that most of them have, more than 90% of them have access to protection. But I really have my doubts about whether we have all the protection gears available, including the lead apron, the thyroid shield, the gloves, the goggles, and everything. To my understanding, uh, access to only a thyroid shield and the lead apron is very common. Goggles are not generally used, so the things could possibly vary from place to place. Then we evaluated the relationship between the veterinarians who have access to radiation protection equipment or the shield, and those who check the integrity of that shield, which is also important. So the ones who have access to it, about 61% of these people did not check the integrity of the shields very frequently, and many of them did not even know that such check is required. So by any chance, if there is a loss of integrity or any breakage in this shield components, the purpose is going to go away, and that's not going to stop the X-rays from exposing your body to. So it's very important that we need to understand, and we need to basically check the integrity of the shield as well at a frequent interval. The next question was, to identify the awareness about the knowledge of having what is dosimeter, and that's pretty, great that we did have 85% of the population responding to our thing as yes, that they know what exactly are the dosimeters. However, the ones who have knowledge about dosimeter and those who are actually using it, so that's what the graph says. On x-axis we have the veterinarians who are practicing using dosimeter while performing x-ray, whereas on the y you have the ones who said yes, they know what is dosimeter and they know the ones who said no, we don't know what is dosimeter. So amongst the guests who know what is dosimeter, around 58% are not using it while performing an X-ray. I mean, which makes really, which is a very intriguing thing, that if they know what exactly the dosimeter is, why aren't they using it? And that's what, the importance of the radiation safety meeting, the training here, that we need to understand the utility of these things, these components, and use them pretty wisely. Then we had a next question, that the people who are using dosimeters, do they have it unique for each particular person who is doing the X-rays? And importantly, about 18% of these people, they have not been having a unique ID, a unique dosimeter or a TLD badge for themselves, which is again very surprising, that if we are going to share a dosimeter, it's going to give or record the shared exposure and will not tell you about a specific exposure of yourself when you are doing the X-rays. So it's important that we need to have a unique dosimeter to every person who is working in the field of X-rays. Now the next part is, even if we have a dosimeter, we are using it, right? How frequently we are replacing it, sending it for analysis? Only 36% were doing it precisely correct as per the guidelines. As per the ARB guidelines, every 3 months we have to send it to the company from which we are bringing it, the facility from which we are bringing it, for the analysis of the exposure. And every 3 months we need to change it, so that we replace it with the new one. And we have a record of, say, three monthly for a year, and you have a cumulative exposure measured over the period of time. I'm not very sure, whoever said once a year, never, or every 6 months, possibly we are aware of this fact that needs to be checked and replaced every 3 months. We also had, asked a question, that how many X-rays you take basically in a day on an average. So, and we tried to club that with the answer of, using dosimeter while taking the X-rays. So we had the answer to this question, the people who said yes were 21, that yes, they use dosimeter while taking X-rays, and the ones who do not use dosimeter, the answers were 37, right? So 37 vets basically do not use dosimeter, while 21 veterinarians, they use dosimeter. The ones who use dosimeter, on an average, they take 10 X-rays in a day. But the ones who do not use dosimeter, excuse me, they they perform 5.24 X-rays in a day. So imagine that 5.24 X-rays equivalent exposure goes unmeasured in their daily routine, and that is just an average. The range is from 1 X-ray to 30 X-rays. I mean, imagine what must be happening to people who have been taking more than 20 or 30 X-rays in a day, and not quantifying the exposure. I mean, they are possibly going towards a slow poisoning, which is very bad. Now, we also try to relate the finding of, whether they are aware of the possible radiation limit given to people and the number of X-rays that they are doing. So, whoever people were aware of the maximum possible radiation limit, who said yes, were 52, and only 6 said that okay, we have no idea about the radiation exposure. So the ones who said yes, about 52 beds, they have been taking on an average 6.92 X-rays. On the other hand, excuse me, on the other hand, the ones who are not aware of a maximum possible radiation limit in a year, they have been taking 7.5 X-rays on an average per day. Although the number was very less of the people doing this, but the range is again pretty wide, 1 to 30 X-rays, and they are really exposing themselves, and we as an academic institution and as a body to make sure that we need to make sure the welfare of this veterinarian, and we need to come up with such trainings and make people aware that guys, this is not something we should be doing. And the important thing now, and that's pretty interesting statistics I had to present here, that we tried to put a graph of number of x-rays taken in a day, right, by all veterinarians, and we had 58 responses compared to what age group they fall in on the x-axis. So here what we can see, 20 to 30, we have the maximum number of people who are taking maximum number of x-rays, going towards 30, 40, even 20, 10 to 15. It's a common thing. The people who are in the range of up to 30 years age, 30 to 40, again they have been taking less than 10 x-rays in a day. 40 to 50, slightly more, they've been taking again around 10. Some sporadic person is taking 15 x-rays, and senior veterinarians are taking around 5 to 7 x-rays in a day. My point is that people in the reproductive age are taking the maximum number of x-rays here, and not all of them have been using the shielding to protect themselves from the exposure. Neither all of them are using the dosimeters to quantify their exposure over a period of time as well. So, we really need to change this. We need to make sure that we are considering this exposure to the radiation pretty seriously, and make sure that we do not perform x-rays without proper protection, proper this thing, the measuring devices, and possibly rotate. I mean, we can't be taking 30 x-rays in a day. I mean, that's really cruel on your part to yourself. The next question was, have you taken radiation safety training before or since the use of the x-ray in your practice? And about 75% of the people had said no, that we have no training at all. And which is why I wanted to point out that we have unscrutinized practices. How come we are allowed to use x-rays if we have not taken any radiation safety training, right? I mean, that's pretty unfortunate on on us basically, but we definitely need to make sure that yes, we need to have radiation safety trainings to understand the effects of this. So the trainings are must. I would like to wrap up here saying that the trainings are must for veterinarians who are working with the x-rays, fluoroscopy, CT scans. X-rays was the basic one, that's why I chose that, but we have certain setups now which are coming up with CT scans and fluoroscopy as well, or some are using it in the diagnostic laboratory like RI labs and all. So we need to be aware of this. We also need to spread awareness that where we should take these trainings from, and that's very important. The radiation safety is important for your personal safety as well as safety of the people who are working with you as well, and being aware of a cumulative threat over the period of time, the side effects of the radiation exposure will definitely help us to ensure the well-being of these patients. I am very much thankful to you all for allowing me to present this topic in front of you. And on a closing remark, I'm just putting a few pictures here which are practicing hands-free x-rays for dogs. They've been putting restrainers, the strings have been tied to their legs, they are using sandbags to make sure that dogs don't move and the area of interest is kind of focused. Thank you very much. And don't forget to stay protected. Thank you.